know that huge changes are happening on this planet, but I think that many times we don't understand how deep those changes go, or how deep they have to go. And we have maybe a habit of thinking, okay, the problem is essentially evil. There are these bad people in charge. They're, whatever they are, the politicians, the corporations, these bad things. And if we could just eliminate them, then everything would be fine. But we've tried that before. It was called the Bolshevik Revolution. You try that, but what do you have happen? The same kinds of structures are recreated in just maybe a slightly altered form. We need a deeper revolution than that. It's not about conquering evil. That's a mindset that's been around for several thousand years and it hasn't worked. You could say that the revolution that we're in the midst of now is a revolution of love. And it involves a fundamentally different way of seeing the world. It goes all the way down to that level, to the level of who am I? What's the purpose of life? What's important? The answers to these questions are changing now. Even the answer to who am I? We're not anymore. We're not these separate selves in a universe of force and mass that's external to ourselves. But we're connected beings. What does politics look like with the understanding of our interconnectedness? And it's more than interconnectedness. It's inner beingness. It's not just that we're these separate beings with a connection, and we have a connection to nature, and we depend on nature. It's that we are part of nature, that you are part of me, that every person I encounter is a reflection of myself, that everything I do to the other, to another person, to nature, I'm doing to myself. We used to not understand that. We used to think that we can, whatever we do to nature, if we have a clever enough technological solution, we can insulate ourselves from the effect. Now we're learning that everything we're doing is coming back to us. We're destroying ecosystems, and our own internal ecosystem, our own health, is deteriorating. And it's inescapable.
Most human beings don't want to believe that there is a global shift in consciousness taking place, simply because it is going to have to take all of us out of our comfort zone. It's going to have to force all of us to think again about who we are, why we're here, and what we're here for.
Reality is not separate from our consciousness. We've dreamed up a scenario that's full of war, full of hatred, full of violence, full of destruction. And most people think that that's the way it is now. And because of that acceptance of that's the way it is, it holds it in place. It's like this feedback system. The universe says, okay, here's what you're thinking. And then it happens in front of you. And because it happens in front of you, you think, that's reality happening and I've got nothing to do with it, in a sense. And that's how it is. But it's the other way around. We thought it up and then it became that. So the dream time is now. The dreaming is now. And we're all dreaming it together. You actually haven't forgotten how to dream. You've just forgotten that you're dreaming.
We're beginning to open up. We're beginning to realize that the limits of our imagination in the past are not sufficient to take us forward into the future. We need to imagine again. We need to dream again. And we need to, this needs to begin again, and we cannot be tied down to old models of the past. They have a lot of wonderful things to teach us, but that's not where it's at. This, here, now. This is where it's at.
We have to change our focus. We have had irresponsible leadership based on an irresponsible system. We have to change the system so that, in fairness to leaders, that the focus is that much longer. We have to focus on what is going to happen. Climate change is a great wake-up call. Whether that climate change, to what extent it's caused by humans and to what extent it's caused by the sun getting hotter and the sun cycles is an open question, but the pollution of planet Earth and the desecration of the Great Mother is not. It's time for responsible leadership that thinks generations ahead. Big change is needed, and it's needed now. Yes, you.
One problem with making demands to those in power is it kind of validates the power relationship, and it says that whatever I need, it's something that someone on high in authority can grant. However, we're learning now that the things that we want are so different from the world that we have today that you can't even necessarily articulate them as a demand. They're so outside the system that we recognize. And we understand now that only a total transformation is going to bring about the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible.
Yeah, so politicians are doing a really good job these days of making things more extreme. They're doing really radical sort of actions that are making society a bit more upset than they have been in the past about what they're doing. Like, for example, there's never been an outbreak of peace on the earth ever before when the US invaded Iraq. 30 million people came out in support of peace. Now that is a signal that they're actually doing a good job for peace, in a sense, even though they're unconscious of their actions. Like, they actually didn't mean to have such an outpouring of peace. That's not why they did it. They did it for their own greedy needs, but the result of those sorts of actions is that more people are jumping off the fence and they're saying, actually, this is not right.
There's a larger abuse at play here, and also a karmic legacy, if you like, that's playing out here. The imbalance between the masculine and the feminine, and within each and every one of us, whether or not we're male or female. And so this is the rebalancing of that, if you will. It's no accident that the huge transnational corporations who are causing the ecocide today are driven by a very aggressive, macho, male-dominated world that is capable of making decisions of enormous harm without care or regard for others. And this really is the healing that's required. When we see it as a rupturing of the heart space, then you can see that it's a kind of dis-ease. The disease here is the pain that's playing out the heart space. So not only is this the balancing, the rebalancing of the masculine and the feminine, and really kind of getting into that more heartfelt space, but also the capacity, the feminine capacity to embrace the pain as well, and do it from a place of it's fierce love, if you like, because fierce love also knows when to set boundaries to create greater freedom. There's nothing worse than saying there, on you go, but you can keep on doing the harm anyway. It is about the accountability and saying, okay, nobody comes to the table with clean hands here. Let's create the new pathways and give all help and all assistance there. For those who choose to continue causing harm, that's part of the fierce mother coming out and saying, enough.
Pain. When you hurt bad enough, you tend to listen. Don't you think? Sure gets my attention. Unfortunately, we learn from our pain, not from our happiness, so we perpetuate our pain in that way. And learn from it, I hope.
And this is normal. If you look at your own life, probably any really big change happened after some kind of collapse. The old world falls apart and a new world is born. And our society is going through this very natural process, which is scary.
I do feel the Earth's energy is changing. I think all that we have to do is live in conjunction with nature. And we see that the weather patterns are changing. and that the seasons are changing, and that we can experience the fact that time as we know it is changing. So how could we, unless we are completely insular in our own little busy world, how could we help but notice that there is a change going on and that we are a part of it?
I feel like we need, as a society, to hit rock bottom. And until we hit rock bottom, then we're going to continue our destructive ways.
And in between the falling apart of the old world and the emergence of the new, whether it's in personal life or on a collective level, there is this sacred space, the space between worlds, the space between stories. Many people are going through that kind of transition today.
Well, I bled to death in the birth of my second child. I remained fully conscious and experienced my last breath and experienced not being able to breathe anymore, and then experienced a slight, as my spirit left through my crown chakra, bink. I was in the hospital room in my hospital bed, and they were pumping blood into my body, and it was not thawed. I have a rare blood type, so they had to fly it in or somehow get it, and it was frozen. So they were putting it into my body, and it hadn't been warmed entirely, and it was the most pain I've ever been in my life. And it felt like a million bees going all in your bloodstream, and I thought, whoa, I'm not going to tolerate this. This is not good. And so I left. And then I was taken to a room in a temple, a marble temple, and I was levitated in the center of the room, and there were 24 beings around me, and there was just total silence and spaciousness. So I hung out there for a while, and then there was a very wise and old nurse in the hospital, because apparently they couldn't get me to come back. And so this wise old nurse went into the nursery and got my newborn son and brought him into the room and stayed there beside my bed until he cried. And when he cried, his cry called me back. And as I'm sure all, as a mother, there's nothing like your baby's cry. And it reached out through time and space and brought me back. And then I had to commit to be there.
We have a story we tell ourselves about what's real, who am I, how to live life, what's important, how to do things. And all of a sudden that story doesn't work anymore.
But you see, Spirit has made sure that I'm not going to ever be comfortable, because I think that comfort is the greatest danger. Of course I want it. There's part of me that would like just to sink into my comfortable house and have all sorts of comforts. And occasionally I despair that that is not the life that I'm living. And then I realize how fortunate I am, because I don't ever settle and go numb. And that's a very strong call within us. Let me just be secure. Let me just be comfortable. Let me just be safe. Those are illusions.
And maybe on some deep level that new structures are going to appear, and you're going to have new habits, new ways of dealing with the world, but that hasn't come yet. A new job, a new relationship, a new way of life. or on the social level, new social and political structures that are maybe much more aligned with our values and aligned with the sacred, but that hasn't come yet.
The heart tells the truth and the mind lies. That's how I see it.
I just find life gets easier and easier when I tell the truth. And going back many years, I remember putting myself in situations where I actually didn't know what my truth was to start with, and so I'd built up a life of lies because I was still trying to discover who I was. But in the revelations of those truths, to be able to express that truth to a loved one in particular, that I wasn't the person that I thought I was and they thought I was absolutely heartbreaking, absolutely necessary as well once the truth was revealed. And I think that was some of the biggest lessons I've ever had to learn in my life, is to be completely transparent, especially with my loved ones, about who I am in this moment, and to have somebody, a witness to my process that says, yeah, I hear you, I hear where you're at, is such an empowering tool as a human being.
It's about us doing our very best to unfold the complex, contradictory, often layered aspects of everything without the intention of actually trying to find the good people and the bad or the right and the wrong, but simply how it was shared.
Many people don't really understand what is happening, and when you don't understand, you go into fear. It is so much about letting go the polarity, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, all the opposites. And when you let go of that, you move automatically into your heart. There's no more need to play out those games. And suddenly you find that life, the life you can create, is actually a life of magic.
So many people are going into this transition stage, and it's a very sacred space. And who knows how long it's supposed to last. It could be very short, it could be a long time, but and I think it's important to be comfortable in that empty space.
Rebuild it. Do something beautiful with it. You know that it's a mess. Now, jump off the cliff and fly. Fly. Don't, you know, God isn't there just because, we've lost our parents or our marriage has fallen apart or our teenage children are giving us so much grief we feel like digging a hole and sticking our head in it. That's religion. That's religion coming and saying, don't worry, here come the cavalry, we'll sort everything out. No, I've got to be open to this and go, well, actually, this is wonderful that I've been given this to deal with. Not, this is awful.
And if we can get back to that right tune or vibration and really tune that up there, we'll be able to all be connected once again. And it can. Right now, we're utilizing global gatherings, through the web. We can utilize that and have people do a candlelight vigil, a meditation, a sweat lodge. They can have a ceremony, a dance where they're fasting and praying, whatever that community or family or individuals choose. And then as long as we all know, we can all connect in at that certain time and place, and then that creates that link and that bridge. And we've actually studied this with scientists, spiritualists, shamans, medicine peoples, all over the world. We've been studying these points, these ley lines, grid lines, and there's actually a great movement happening too. There's what I believe, there's a whole new system being overlaid on Mother Earth right now and through our body, human consciousness. So we're going to another level, and this time we're all going to go through it together, everyone. And now we're together from all over the world. Before we were in our own pockets around the world, our own countries, and we couldn't move. So through this technology and the bridging of spiritual and material, now we're able to all go through this mass consciousness shift all together. So it's a great leap. It's a great leap for humanity.
There's a beautiful process that happens in Israel called Sulha. SULHA. And it is a process where Palestinians, Israelis and Arabs come together and they camp with each other for 3 days, and they are all asked the same 3 questions, which are formalized each year, I think. I don't know what the questions are, but they're pertinent questions. And they all have to answer their questions from their own perspective, and there's no discussion on their answers. So it's a listening exercise, really. And everybody gets to hear what everyone else from these different backgrounds feels about the same 3 issues. And just bearing witness to that is a profound thing, finding that by the end of these 3 days, there's a great sense of brotherhood that occurs. There's a sense of, hey, they're not so different from me after all.
I'd only like to say that once in the past a man came along and said, love your neighbour as yourself. You cannot love your neighbour until you love yourself. Until you love. Until you learn to love. And I have a long, long way to go on that.
The gathering has different people coming from different cultures each year. Quite commonly they have Tibetan lamas coming and holding space. Desmond Tutu is a great supporter of the Sulha. And so they like to get people from different cultural backgrounds to come and hold space. And they call them spirit holders. So my intention is to bear witness to this. And then hopefully I'll learn something from this process also, and maybe even be able to do something similar in Australia with Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people.
So you know you're a human being, at least in comparison with other animals, you know you're human. So it's best that you strive to take this humanity to its ultimate nature. If your humanity overflows, divinity inevitably happens. If you have not allowed your humanity to reach its peak, divinity is just an empty talk. It's up there. If you allow your humanity to reach its very peak, divinity is a living reality for you.
Take care of yourself. Take care of the waters of your body. Take care of the way you relate to the world around you. Take care of your emotional body. Take care of the animal friends that you meet on the way. Take care of the people that you meet. I mean, take care.
Just as we have fracking out there, what is the fracturing that's playing out in our own hearts? What is the healing that's required here? That really is the sacred activism, if you like. And if we choose to be voices for the earth, if we choose to respond to that call, and we take that step into that place, we're being invited to heal ourselves. And from that healing, it's not that we end up feeling better, but we get better at feeling. And so, of course, what happens there is that we become increasingly aware of the significant harm that's playing out in the earth today. The ecocide, we get to a point we can physically feel it, and it becomes untenable. And we get to a point and we say, enough, no more, this must end.
Our whole civilization was built on urgency, on efficiency. Why do we think that in this time of crisis, that the solution is going to be more urgency, more efficiency? Maybe sometimes we have to do less, especially when our actions are so habituated that anything we do is going to in some way end up perpetuating the old.
The minute that I speed up and I lose that careness, I'm going too fast, and I've lost something precious. And believe me, there's a million ways a day that I tempt myself to lose it, and I have to come back to it like a heartbeat. Take care, take care, take care. And it's a training, isn't it? It's a training for me. It's like, can you do this? Will you do this? Can you see the importance in this? And what else do you think you're doing that's more important?
According to our old understanding of cause and effect, which is based essentially on Newtonian force. You know, Newton and Galileo, they said if you want to change anything in reality, you have to exert a force on it. Well, if you really live accordingly and believe accordingly, then you realize that any meaningful change is impossible, because the powers that be have a lot more force at their disposal than you do, and you're just one person. If you don't know what to do, maybe you shouldn't do anything, and just wait for the clarity and wait for the impulse to act.
During this time of change, that we don't need to do anything to protect ourselves. Going to a secret place somewhere, or hiding food in the ground or guns and stuff and trying to protect ourselves, it's not going to work. It's simply about being in your heart, being connected to the Mother Earth, to Father Sky, and to be directly connected to Great Spirit. It's simple. Anybody can do this. Anyone. You just let go and just go within. It's easy. And at which point, we will begin to realize that the dreamlike nature of this, because Mother Earth can do anything, absolutely anything at all.
But now we're transitioning into, it might be trite to say it, but a quantum world, in which things happen that aren't the result of force. Things just happen. And you're not just some isolated, separate being, but self and other are connected in mysterious ways. And it's no longer true that you are impotent. But in fact, everything you do has, you could even say, a cosmic significance.
Well, I think it's getting more difficult to live life the way we have been living it at a grassroots level, and more people are discovering this in their own lives. And so each of us is grappling with new ways of coming to terms with the globalization of information and the changes that are taking place in our institutions, and the collapse of many of our institutions, and the changes that are taking place. And how it translates for each of us is unique to us, because each of us is in the world in a different way. We're all in the same physical world, but we're in very different emotional and spiritual worlds. And so it becomes a unique answer for each person.
You know, many of us are discovering that our creative capacity far exceeds what we used to understand as possible. And you bow into service to something greater than yourself, to something that wants to be born on earth. And you discover that synchronicities line up. You find yourself in just the right place at just the right time. And you become capable of creating way more than you could rationally expect.
Now, synchronicity, as I understand it now, is the environment in which we live in communicating with us to accentuate thought. And so I might think something, and then I might hear that same thought on the radio. And then the next day I see something similar on a billboard, or read something similar in a newspaper. And most people have had this experience, where something is reinforced time and time again, and they go, that must be correct then, because it's just come up too many times in the last 48 hours, for example.
Synergy actually is much easier than pushing. And so what I've found is that companies that seem to be receptive to corporate responsibility, to new types of models, get things done faster and easier than the old model. And so there's a lot of grace, there's a lot of synchronicity that happens in that way. So I've seen that for a long time personally, but also seen it more now.
And I start to recognize when nature was communicating with me, when I was syncing certain things. And I start recognizing that there's a larger communication system happening, which is not determined on a person telling me things. It was the natural environment, which includes the cities and all that sort of stuff, the external environment communicating with me directly and personally. And I started to realize that there was a larger consciousness at work, which was communicating with me personally, that could hear every thought, that could understand every feeling, and was using absolutely everything at its disposal in order to get me to open my ears and my eyes and my mind to the fact that there's a greater intelligence. That was a major breakthrough for me, to realize that I wasn't alone in my thinking. I wasn't this body having thoughts that nobody else could hear or feel or think or sense.
Just the fact where you can go in and meet with the senior executives of the company and think that you're going to fall flat on your face because you're trying to talk to them about corporate responsibility or talk to them about new ways of doing things, which may not implicitly show profits right away, not primarily profit-driven. Profits are real. And only to have them be completely receptive to it and say, you know, this is what we've been talking about, but you really kind of framed it up and made it very clear for us. Thank you.
Ideally, money should represent society's agreement about what's valuable and what isn't. And today, money's got a bit of a problem. Activities that are destroying the earth are considered very valuable according to the money system. You can make a lot of money by doing some pretty ugly things, and a lot of really beautiful things that everybody would agree are valuable. Society needs it, the planet needs it, but there's no money in those things. So we need to change our money system so that it is aligned with all of the beautiful, restorative, healing things that people want to do today. But there's another piece. It's not only that money is misaligned, it's that money is about counting, it's about measuring. And there are always things that you cannot measure, the qualitative things. And these are the things that are missing from the monetized life. You can have enormous monetary wealth and buy everything that you can buy with money, but there's still something missing. This is what people crave, the unquantifiable, things like intimacy, connection, feeling at home in the universe, a sense of adventure, things like that. So people use money to purchase substitutes for these things they really need. How much of a substitute is enough? No amount is enough. So it's addictive. So people consume more and more and more because they're missing what's really important.
I think Eckhart Tolle talked about it beautifully when he discussed the notion of being present. Once you are present to yourself and you're present to the relationships that you're having, then you're not going to hurt other people. You're not going to willingly kill other beings. It's that type of awakening to the presence, to our own presence and our own energies as a result of being human.
You know, not listening to the still small voice, which only speaks once. It goes, yes, no. And if you're not listening, then you miss it. And then you've missed the truest guidance, the only guidance that matters. So over time, that voice then just goes, and there's no chance of hearing it because you're not feeling it either. So then you're lost. I mean, what else could be wrong? You know, we're not listening.
Our concept of freedom has been defined in relationship to the power structures that exist today. And these power structures are oppressive, by and large. For example, the structures of debt that hold millions of people in lives of bondage. People spend their whole lives doing things that they really don't want to do because they have to pay these debts, right? And so freedom to them would mean a freedom from obligation. Means kind of like, I get to do whatever I want. But I think that that is actually just a stage. Because what we really want is connection to each other. What we really want is to be of service. And that's a different kind of sovereignty than just to be free of obligations. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves. And we want to be part of something that we believe in, something that's beautiful to us. We want to be free to express our gifts in a beautiful way.
And it's becoming more and more apparent that if you do it right, the money will come. That's the easy way. That's the way where you get the flow and the assistance from, whether it be the planet, whether it be spirit, whether it be just luck. That's the way you do it. Certainly from a brand standpoint, because when you're building a brand and you're building a promise behind your brand, that's what people sign on to. And the transparency that is so ubiquitous now, you can't hide. So if they don't like what you're doing, what your company stands for, and what your product is doing, they just won't buy your product.
We're here with incredible gifts. We're born with these gifts. And we're born into a state of gratitude because we didn't earn these gifts. The gift of life, the gift of our time, the gift of a planet that nourishes us. And since we've received so richly, we want to give in turn. But many people are stuck in jobs or relationships or whole lives where these gifts are locked inside and they're not engaged. They're doing a job and they think, I wasn't put here on earth to do this. And I think this is really the freedom that we want. We want the freedom to express ourselves fully and to be creative beings.
Any of these people who were channeling and who were listening to other things, but deep inside of them where they were getting their source of knowledge, that's what I see happening. And don't forget that it all parlays on itself. So you see something, and then catalytically again, and exponentially it gets bigger, and then bigger, and then bigger. So that can happen very quickly.
I see money changing in its nature so that it's no longer based on interest-bearing debt. But I also see a shrinkage of the money realm, not its disappearance, but a shrinkage of the money realm and the emergence of other ways of sharing, other ways of circulating wealth. And we're already seeing it, on the internet, couch surfing, open source software, just neighborhood sharing things, some on the internet, some not. But people find that their lives are enriched when they share more. If I give you something, then you feel like you kind of want to give something back, right? We have a tie. But if I sell you something, then we're done. I don't owe you anything. You don't owe me anything. It's done. No bond is created. No tie is created. And we're living now in an atomized society where people don't have ties to each other. And we want to reforge those ties and have community again.
Design can play a perfect role in that, to understand it from a human standpoint, but really take us for the ride, because these technologies that are coming from transportation to the medical to just the biofeedback and meditative support and techniques, wonderful. So all that transcendental product, if you will, or transcendental experiences that are tied to a product or a device, that's where the fun really lies.
This transition, this falling apart of the world and this birth into a new world, that comes as a gift too. It's something that happens to you. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to do anything hard for it to happen. You don't even have to surrender. You will be surrendered. It's happening. The fact that you're listening to this right now means that you're already in the midst of the transition, one way or another.
We are in the middle of an awakening, which is the way that I'd like to call it. Is that perhaps every generation has sat back at some point and went, well, we're on the cusp, we're in the middle of an awakening, and maybe this is part of being human, that we have to believe our own ego takes over, and we're saying, you know, we are living at such an important point in history, which masks the fact, actually, that all points in history are incredibly important. All moments, each breath, each observation is intensely important. And I think that having said that, it's that realization that perhaps we're coming to how terribly fragile, beautiful, and profound each moment is. It's always been like that, but we're just beginning to understand that now.
It's like we're inhabiting this egg, this world egg, and the shell is getting thinner and thinner. And as it gets thinner, cracks appear, and light shines in from a larger world. And so eventually we hatch into this larger world, and the things that were once miraculous are now normal. We understand them now. They're part of our larger understanding of reality.
What is death? Death is an exhale that can no longer be followed by an inhale. So the importance of breath is that it keeps us in physical form. And when you're holding your breath, you are trying to control something. So a full, easy, complete breath is life.
There's something out there that wants to happen on Earth, and all of us can feel it coming, and we want to be part of it. And that being, that thing that wants to be born on Earth, would love to receive our gifts. And when we bow into service to this being, then it creates opportunities. The vision itself creates the opportunities for us to give our gifts.
When I look at what design can do when there is not this necessity to sell, to push, that's the big difference. When you can create something that has a pull strategy to it, where there isn't a corporate drive behind it that really needs to push this quarter's sales, then the whole table turns. You can really focus on just creating the best product and refining it for attaining that goal rather than the short-time gains of quarterly or annual profits. So that's really the ideal, is then you get to focus on the type of product. And personally, those types of products are the ones that bring the most social benefit, wellness to people. That's definitely where I find my interest and where I think the greatest impact is going to be.
You know, we started out as just another animal, naked and helpless and ignorant and superstitious. But then, thanks to our big brains, we developed technology and gradually became the lords and masters of nature. And the story says someday our domination of nature will be complete. We'll leave Earth behind, or we'll live in bubble cities separate from nature and engineer everything, synthesize food, and we won't even, maybe we'll conquer all disease and transcend death itself. This myth is falling apart now. Technology isn't bringing the miracles that it was supposed to. And instead of transcending nature and moving beyond nature, we want to rejoin nature. The myth of ascent also involves like this kind of spiritualization where the evolved person isn't involved in material things. You know, I'm in the world of spirit, right? And now we're discovering that that too was a fantasy, a delusion. We want to become more embodied, more connected, more material, to rejoin nature and not to look at it as some lower thing or some bad thing.
Fabulous time we're in. Fantastic, incredible times. The best show in town. A lot of beings are here, and they're all looking down and going, what are the humans going to do? And there are many who say what is to happen here has never happened before on any planet in the way that it's going to happen here. And that I wouldn't know how to describe, but I do think that that is what's coming, something that we've never seen or heard or experienced ever before.
So that opens up the question, though, what is the destiny of humanity? Why are we here? Every species on Earth has an important gift to give the totality of all life on Earth. And humanity is no different. What is our gift to Earth? This is the most important question we can ask as we enter the adulthood of the species. We've been a child species up until now. And a child plays, and a child grows, and practices using his or her gifts. But only when we enter adulthood do we turn those gifts toward their true purpose. An adolescent, when you're maybe 15, 16, 17, it becomes the most important thing in the world to you to discover, why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? What's the purpose of my gifts? That's what, university is supposed to be about. And humanity now, we're entering that stage where we're really searching for our purpose here. At the beginning, for the next few hundred years, our purpose will probably be to heal the damage that's been caused, to reverse the deserts, to replant the forests, to take care of Earth, to heal the toxic waste. But after that, who knows what our purpose will be?